Hello, my name is James Zimmer, and this is my presentation on my agent interview. I had the express privilege to interview Gary Halseth, who at the time of the interview was 74 years old. He just recently turned 75 on March the 23rd. I met Gary through my mother because Gary's girlfriend is my mom's husband's sister's boyfriend. No, it's kind of complicated. I really enjoyed this interview because Gary's life was very, very interesting. It's always interesting to get the perspective of someone who has lived quite a long life, as Gary had. Especially when he was describing his time at NASA, where he worked at mission control through the Gemini and Apollo programs. He was there when the first fatality at the during the Apollo program happened, and he explained kind of what went down during that and the raw emotions after losing some of our nation's greatest astronauts. He also went on to tell me how he was working in computers at the Pentagon, and he was there during the Falklands invasion. And it was kind of interesting because you don't normally hear about the American side of the Falklands invasions because it was purely a British response to local nationals rising up. Gary's journey through life hit some bumps, just like everybody does, especially if you live life as long as he has. But the one thing that he demonstrated was this was something that he actually kind of grew from and has made him the man he is today. To give an overview on Gary's life, he was born in Bagley, Minnesota. His father was originally from North Dakota. His mom was from Bagley. He stayed there until he joined the Army, which he started out in computers. He has two sons from his first marriage, David and Daryl, and that marriage lasted for about 18 years. His second marriage was met with tragedy, unfortunately, and he sat there and told me how much that his second marriage meant to him. His wife ended up dying from an aggressive form of brain cancer. This relationship would last 12 years, and during this relationship, he would have no kids from it. Very interesting, and he was pretty lighthearted about it. He kind of joked how his current girlfriend was actually his second wife's best friend, which I guess if you look at it, it's they were friends before she had passed away, and sometimes that's the way it works out. In my paper, I focused on two different stages, developmental stages, using Erikson's theory of development. And the reason why is because they seemed very significant to Gary's life, especially how he resolved each of these crises. The first one was generativity versus stagnation, and the second was integrity versus despair. The reason why I picked the generativity versus stagnation was throughout, and I looking at his story, his father, when he was young, was deployed to World War II, and for a good majority of Gary's life, he was not there for it, and his mother raised him. And when he got back, Gary's father was not as successful as he was in the military and worked a whole bunch of odd jobs, but Gary told me that he was still able to provide for his family. Growing up, this is one thing that Gary decided that he was not going to have, and he was going to provide a very good life for his family and his kids. Well, joining the Army, especially something as big as computers back during his day, he was able to get out of the military and become a defense contractor and provide very, very well for his family. Specifically, when his family moved to a place called Lake Battle, and they lived on a resort. Unfortunately, this would be the reason why his first marriage did not last, because his wife couldn't deal with the fact that Gary was gone all the time. And that's where I come down to, generativity is, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is where we pass down our ideals to the next generation. Well, it was almost in a way that Gary was trying to avoid that, and he focused more on personal interest, which was showing a little bit of stagnation. But in his mind, he said that instead he was trying to provide for his family, for a life that he didn't have growing up. When it comes to integrity versus despair, and I think this is where Gary kind of grew out of the stagnation, and as in Ericksonian theory, we don't just naturally progress from stage to stage. Sometimes we go back and we resolve our crises and then go forward. And this is what Gary demonstrated, as when during his interview he pointed out that he had learned a lot from his past mistakes, what he realized as mistakes, and his attempts to try to resolve those. Unfortunately, Gary still doesn't have much of a life with his children and grandchildren. I mean, he still does, but he doesn't visit them as much as he would like to. They live in Wisconsin, and I think one lives in Wisconsin, one lives in North Dakota, and he still lives in the place where he was born in Bagley. And he doesn't get to meet him as much, but looking back at his life, and I think this is what was very important during this interview, was he came to terms with everything, and it was very interesting how he kind of looked back at his life. During the interview, he was extremely, extremely happy, and he was more than welcome to do the interview. And I think this helped him also, that he started to think about things that went on in his life, and how maybe some of the things from his father had kind of transcribed onto him and how he treated his kids. But he said he's very proud of his kids, looking at them and how they've grown up. And he pointed out to me that he spends a lot more time with they spend a lot more time with their family than he ever did, or his father did. And why I say that he was successful in this transition, in this Ericksonian crisis, is that he learned from his past, and he's grown from it. He doesn't despair of what happened back then. And that is one of the keys of transitioning into this developmental stage, was to demonstrate ego integrity. And like I said, this seemed to be a very, very important part of Gary's life. It's really interesting to look at half this stuff and how it affects us, and how with him sitting there trying to tell me, when I asked him, I said, did he have any advice for me? It was interesting to see how, he might have, like I said, go back one stage. It's not a smooth road all throughout the stages. It was interesting after I asked him what advice he'd have for me growing up, as a head growing up, but going later in life. And he sat there and pointed out, spend time with family. Yes, providing a better life is important. Work is important. Schooling's important. But he said in the end, make terms and make time for your family. And he I think that's where kind of a little bit the regret lies, is that he didn't get to do that with his family. But if you look at it, that's kind of, going back to the generativity. pass it on to the next generation, which I greatly appreciated. Overall, this interview, like I said, was very exciting. It was very eye-opening, and it's just one thing that, we as a younger generation need to do more often. That's about it. Like I said, I hope you enjoy my paper. Like I said, is very eye-opening, and hopefully it brings credit to Gary's life. Thank you.